Ever been called a liar when you're telling the absolute truth? Now imagine you're 10 years old, standing in front of your entire class, and your teacher just ripped up your homework. Not because it was wrong, but because she refused to believe a black kid from a rental apartment could have a father who's a 4-star general. This is Lucas Hughes' story. And what happens next will blow your mind. Picture this. It's a regular Thursday morning at Jefferson Elementary in Arlington, Virginia. Kids shuffling to their seats, backpacks hitting the floor, that typical classroom buzz. Then Mrs. Patricia Whitmore, 23 years of teaching under her belt, American flag pin gleaming on her lapel, makes an announcement that shatters everything. She's standing over Lucas Hughes' desk, reading his career day assignment. You can see her lips pressing into that thin line teachers get when they think you're pulling a fast one. And then she just explodes. A black boy from a rental apartment claiming his daddy's a 4-star general? Her voice carries across the room like a weapon. That's the most ridiculous lie I've heard in all my years of teaching. Before Lucas can even process what's happening, she snatches his paper. The one he'd written so carefully, with those block letters he'd practiced. And she rips it. Not once. Again. And again. The pieces flutter down onto his worn Nikes like the world's cruelest confetti. Here's what she says next, and I need you to really hear this. You don't get to make up fairy tales about being special, Lucas. Generals live in big houses. Their children go to private schools. They drive expensive cars. She pauses, and her voice drops to ice. They certainly don't show up looking like you. 10 years old. That's all Lucas is. His hands are shaking. Every single kid in that room is staring. And Mrs. Whitmore crumples up those torn pieces and tosses them in the trash like they're nothing. Pathetic. That's the word she uses. For a child telling the truth. Let me take you back a few hours. Lucas wakes up to his dad calling from downstairs. Breakfast in 5, soldier. Normal morning, right? The Hughes family lives in this modest 3-bedroom apartment in Arlington, close enough to Fort Myer that you can hear the morning bugle if the windows are cracked. The furniture's clean but worn. Family photos on the walls, but nothing screaming military family. No uniforms hanging in frames, no medals on display, no flags or plaques announcing who they are. Why? Security protocol. See, General Vincent Hughes doesn't advertise what he does. When Lucas finds him in the kitchen, his dad's wearing jeans and a Georgetown sweatshirt. Could be anybody, a teacher, an office worker, just a regular dad making breakfast. Lucas's mom, Dr. Angela Hughes, is pouring coffee in her scrubs before her surgery shift at Walter Reed. But on the fridge, there's this crayon drawing Lucas made. A stick figure in uniform with 4 stars on each shoulder. And right next to it, today's date circled in red marker, Parent Career Day. Lucas has been waiting for this day for weeks. Finally, he gets to tell everyone about his dad. Finally, he gets to be proud out loud. Dad, can I tell them about the time you met the president? General Hughes exchanges a look with his wife. That look parents give each other when they're about to deliver news their kid won't like. Lucas, remember what we talked about? Some things stay private for security reasons. But everyone else gets to brag about their parents. Vincent's voice gets gentle but firm. I know, son. Our family is different. We keep a low profile. You understand. Lucas nods. But here's the truth. He doesn't really understand. Not fully. Why do other kids get to be proud while he has to stay quiet? Why does his truth have to live in the shadows? Dr. Hughes squeezes her husband's hand. He deserves to be proud of you, Vincent. I know. The general looks at his son. Just keep it simple tomorrow, okay? You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Lucas doesn't know that in less than 12 hours, simple is going to become absolutely impossible. Jefferson Elementary is one of those schools that's supposed to be a melting pot, you know? Military families rotating in and out. Diplomat kids whose parents work at embassies. Immigrant families chasing that American dream. Working-class children whose parents clean the buildings where all the important decisions get made. It's supposed to be where every child matters equally. But Mrs. Patricia Whitmore? She's been teaching there for 23 years. And somewhere along the way, she's developed this crystal-clear sense of who's telling the truth and who's exaggerating. Her classroom walls show it, American flag, photos of her with local politicians, certificates of teaching excellence. She wears that flag pin every single day. Never served in the military herself. Never lived overseas. Never worked a day outside comfortable suburban classrooms. But she knows what generals' families look like. And Lucas Hughes? He doesn't fit the picture. Morning announcements crackle through the intercom. Principal Hayes reminds everyone about career day, about the special guests joining. In Mrs. Whitmore's room, the energy shifts immediately. Tyler Bennett, white kid, dad's a big-shot lobbyist, raises his hand. Mrs. Whitmore, my dad's meeting with 3 senators this week about the infrastructure bill. Her face lights up like Christmas morning. How impressive, Tyler. Public service is so important to our democracy. Next hand up? Sophia Wilson, a Latina girl whose mom cleans the Capitol building. My mom works there too. She cleans the offices after everyone leaves. That's nice, Sophia. The smile doesn't reach Mrs. Whitmore's eyes this time. Now, let's open our textbooks to page 42. Lucas watches this whole exchange. He's seen this pattern before. Some kids get praised. Others get dismissed. It usually depends on what their parents do and how much money they have. At 10 o'clock, Mrs. Whitmore hands out the assignment. I want you to write 3 paragraphs about your parents' careers. What do they do? Why does it matter? How does it help our community? She walks between the desks. Due before our guests arrive. Best handwriting, please. Lucas pulls out his pencil. His heart's racing because finally, he gets to share his truth. He writes in careful block letters. My dad is a 4-star general in the United States Army. He has served our country for 32 years in places like Iraq, Afghanistan, and Korea. He helps make important decisions to keep America safe. There are only about 40 4-star generals in the whole military. My dad worked his way up from 2nd lieutenant. He says leadership means serving others, not yourself. Deshaun Williams, Lucas's best friend, leans over. Yo, is your dad really a general? Lucas nods, keeping his voice low. Yeah, he just doesn't talk about it much. That's so cool. My dad just fixes cars at the garage. My dad says every job matters. Your dad keeps people safe on the roads. That's important too. Deshaun grins. Then Mrs. Whitmore's shadow falls across Lucas's desk. She leans down, reads over his shoulder. Her lips press into that thin line. Lucas feels his stomach drop. Something in her expression tells him she doesn't believe a single word. She says nothing. Not yet. Just walks back to her desk and makes a note in her planner. During the bathroom break, Lucas checks his phone. Text from his mom. Dad's flying back early from Korea. Landing at Reagan 3 p.m. tomorrow. He'll make career day after all. Keep it a surprise. Lucas's heart soars. His dad's been in Korea for 3 weeks. Some kind of strategic planning meetings Lucas isn't allowed to know about. But he's coming home early. He'll be at career day. Lucas wants to shout it from the rooftop. Instead, he slips the phone back and returns to class. He doesn't notice Mrs. Whitmore watching him. Doesn't see that skeptical look burning in her eyes. She's already made up her mind about Lucas Hughes. That boy is a liar. And tomorrow, in front of everyone, she's going to teach him a lesson about honesty. What she doesn't know. In less than 24 hours, a 4-star general is going to walk through her classroom door, and everything she thinks she knows about Lucas Hughes is going to shatter like glass. The next morning hits different at Jefferson Elementary. Parents start filing into Mrs. Whitmore's classroom at 8:30. A lawyer in a sharp suit. An architect carrying blueprints. A software developer. A chef in kitchen whites. A nurse still wearing scrubs from the night shift. Mrs. Whitmore greets each one with varying levels of enthusiasm. The lawyer gets a firm handshake and bright smile. The chef gets a polite nod. The nurse gets a quick, "Thank you for your service," before Whitmore turns to arrange chairs. Lucas sits at his desk, checking his phone every 30 seconds. Text from his dad at 6 this morning, landed. Catching up on sleep. See you at school by 10. Proud of you, son. 2 more hours. Lucas just has to make it 2 more hours. Class. Mrs. Whitmore claps her hands. Before our guests present, let's share the paragraphs you wrote. I want our visitors to hear how thoughtfully you described their work. One by one, students stand and read. Tyler Bennett talks about his father's lobbying firm and the important bills they influence. Mrs. Whitmore beams. Sophia Wilson talks about her mother's cleaning work and how she takes pride in making buildings shine. Mrs. Whitmore offers a tight smile and moves on quickly. Then she calls on Lucas. Lucas Hughes. You're next. Lucas stands. His paper shakes slightly in his hands. He clears his throat and begins reading. My dad is a 4-star general in the United States Army. He has served our country for 32 years in places like Iraq, Afghanistan, and Korea. He helps make important decisions to keep America safe. There are only about 40 4-star generals in the whole military. My dad worked his way up from second lieutenant. He says leadership means serving others, not. Stop. The word cuts through the classroom like a gunshot. Every student freezes. Parents look up from their phones. Mrs. Whitmore stands slowly from her desk. Lucas, come here please. Lucas walks to the front of the room on shaky legs. His heart hammers against his ribs. Class, Mrs. Whitmore says, her voice taking on that teacher lecture tone, this is a perfect example of what we call embellishment. She turns to Lucas. I need you to be honest with everyone right now. What does your father actually do? He's a general, ma'am. Her eyes narrow. Lucas, I have been teaching for 23 years. I have met generals. I have taught generals' children. She crosses her arms. Generals do not live in modest rental apartments. Their children do not attend public schools in worn-out sneakers. Their families are well-connected in the community. There are official records, social events, recognition. Lucas feels his face growing hot. But ma'am, my dad keeps a low profile because... Because of what? Secret missions. Her tone drips with sarcasm. Several students giggle nervously. Tyler Bennett raises his hand. Mrs. Whitmore, maybe his dad really is. Tyler, I appreciate your kindness, but this is a teaching moment. She turns back to Lucas. I checked with the office yesterday. There is no General Hughes listed on our parent registry. Your father's occupation is listed as government employee. That's very different from a 4-star general, isn't it? Lucas's eyes fill with tears. He puts that on forms for security reasons. Enough. The classroom jumps at her raised voice. You will sit down right now. You will rewrite this assignment with the truth, and you will apologize to this class and to our guests for wasting everyone's time with fantasy stories. Do you understand me? Tears spill down Lucas's cheeks. But he doesn't move. Lucas, I said sit down. My dad didn't raise a liar, ma'am. The room goes completely silent. Mrs. Whitmore's face flushes red. Several parents shift uncomfortably in their seats. What did you just say to me? My dad is a general. He's flying back from Korea. He'll be here at 10 o'clock. You'll see. Mrs. Whitmore's jaw clenches. To the principal's office. Now. Deshaun Williams stands up. But Mrs. Whitmore, Lucas isn't lying. I've seen. Deshaun, sit down before you join him. Deshaun sinks back into his chair, shooting Lucas an apologetic look. Lucas grabs his backpack. As he walks toward the door, Mrs. Whitmore delivers her final blow, loud enough for everyone to hear. Class, let this be a lesson. Honesty and humility are virtues we cherish. Making yourself seem more important than you are, especially when you come from certain backgrounds. She lets that hang in the air. Ow is the opposite of character. Lucas stops at the door. His hands grip the straps of his backpack so hard they leave marks. Every eye in the room watches him leave in shame. He has 90 minutes until his father arrives. 90 minutes to survive being called a liar in front of everyone. He has no idea that Mrs. Whitmore is about to have the worst day of her teaching career. The hallway feels longer than usual. Lucas's sneakers squeak against the polished floor. Behind him, he can hear Mrs. Whitmore's voice resuming the career day introductions as if nothing happened. As if she hadn't just destroyed him in front of the entire class. He pulls out his phone. Still no new messages from his dad. Probably still sleeping after that 14-hour flight from Korea. Lucas thinks about texting him, about telling him what just happened. But what would he say? That his teacher called him a liar? That nobody believed him? His dad has enough to worry about. Lucas doesn't want to seem weak. Through the main office window, Lucas spots Principal Hayes on the phone. She's nodding seriously, her expression focused. She glances at a folder on her desk, then looks up and makes eye contact with Lucas through the glass. Her eyes widen slightly, like she recognizes him, but she's mid-conversation, so she just gives him a small nod and returns to her call. Lucas wonders if Mrs. Whitmore has already called ahead to complain about him. Vice Principal Thornton handles the meeting. He's a white man in his 50s who's been at Jefferson Elementary for 15 years. Khakis and a blue polo shirt with the school logo. The kind of face that always looks slightly disappointed. "Sit down, Lucas." Lucas sits in the chair across from Thornton's desk. It's too big for him. His feet barely touch the floor. "So," Thornton begins, opening a folder. "Mrs. Whitmore tells me you disrupted class and refused to correct false information in your assignment." "Sir, it's not false. My dad really is." "Lucas." Thornton holds up a hand. "I pulled your file. Your father is listed as Vincent Hughes. Occupation: government employee. That's what's in our system. That's what he writes on forms, sir. For security reasons." "He's not supposed to." "Security reasons." Thornton chuckles. Not meanly, but like an adult humoring a child's imagination. "Lucas, I understand wanting your father to seem important. A lot of kids do that. But making up elaborate stories about generals and classified information. I'm not making it up." Lucas's voice comes out louder than he intended. Thornton's face hardens. "Lower your voice. You're already in trouble, son. Don't make it worse." Lucas's phone buzzes in his pocket. He pulls it out quickly. A text from his dad, running late. "Briefing at Pentagon got moved up. Be there by 10:30. Hang tight." Lucas's heart leaps. He shows the phone to Thornton. "See? He's coming. He'll be here in less than an hour." Thornton barely glances at the screen. "Lucas, I can't verify anything from a text message. You could have anyone's number saved as Dad in your contacts." He leans forward. "But here's what's going to happen. You're going to return to class. You're going to apologize to Mrs. Whitmore for being disrespectful. You're going to rewrite that assignment with truthful information. And then we're going to move forward." "Understood." Lucas feels his hands beginning to shake. "You don't believe me." "I believe you want attention, Lucas. I understand that impulse. Kids from single-parent homes or families where parents work multiple jobs sometimes create stories to feel special. It's a cry for help, really. My parents are married. My mom's a surgeon at Walter Reed. My dad." "That's enough." Thornton stands. "Return to class right now, or I will call your parents in for a formal disciplinary conference. And trust me, you don't want that on your record." Lucas stands slowly. His vision blurs with tears he refuses to let fall. "My father serves this country, sir. He's been deployed 6 times. He's earned the right to be believed." Thornton's expression softens slightly, but only slightly. "Go back to class, Lucas." When Lucas returns to room 204, everything has changed. Parents now fill the back and sides of the classroom, sitting in a semicircle of borrowed chairs. Career day is in full swing. Mrs. Whitmore stands at the front, introducing Mr. Bennett. "So grateful to have these distinguished guests with us today. Mr. Bennett works with some of the most powerful people in Washington. Let's give him our full attention." Applause ripples through the room. Lucas slides into his seat as quietly as possible. Deshawn leans over and whispers, "You okay?" Before Lucas can answer, Mrs. Whitmore's voice cuts across the room. "Lucas, do you have something to share with the class?" Every head turns. Students, parents, everyone stares. "Ma'am, your apology." Lucas feels his stomach drop. The room goes completely silent. This isn't just his classmates anymore. There are adults here. Professional people. Watching him be humiliated. A 10-year-old black boy being forced to apologize for telling the truth. I don't have anything to apologize for, ma'am." The room gasps. Several parents exchange glances. Some look uncomfortable. Others look at Lucas like he's being disrespectful. Mrs. Whitmore's jaw tightens. "Excuse me? In front of our honored guests, you're going to continue this defiance." Tyler's mother, Ms. Bennett, a lawyer in a gray suit, speaks up gently. "Perhaps we should let the child explain." "I appreciate your concern, Ms. Bennett, but classroom management is my responsibility." Mrs. Whitmore's smile is tight and professional, but her eyes are hard. She turns back to Lucas. You have two choices, young man. You can apologize right now and rewrite your assignment with honest information, or you can spend the rest of career day sitting in the office while your classmates enjoy our guests. Which will it be? Lucas's voice cracks when he speaks. When my dad gets here. Your father is not coming, Lucas. The words echo through the classroom like a slap. Parents shift in their seats. Some students look down at their desks. Mrs. Whitmore continues, her voice taking on a tone of forced patience. Sweetheart, I understand this is hard. But the truth is, your father probably works a regular government job. Maybe at the VA. Maybe at a military base doing paperwork. Those are perfectly respectable positions. She walks closer to his desk. But you've created this fantasy about generals and Korea and important decisions because you're embarrassed. I get it. You see Tyler's dad meeting with senators, and you want your family to seem just as important. Her voice drops, quieter now, but somehow more cutting. But Lucas, there is no shame in being ordinary. The shame is in lying about it. Especially when you come from a community that already struggles with stereotypes about honesty. Mrs. Whitmore, Ms. Bennett stands up. I really don't think. Please, Ms. Bennett. Sit down. The lawyer sits slowly, her expression troubled. Deshaun mutters under his breath. This is so messed up. What was that, Deshaun? Nothing, ma'am. Deshaun Williams, I heard you. Office. No. But I didn't. No. Deshaun grabs his backpack and walks out, giving Lucas one last look of solidarity before disappearing into the hallway. Lucas is alone now, completely isolated in a room full of people. Mrs. Whitmore stands over him, arms crossed, waiting for his apology. The other parents look away, uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. The clock on the wall shows 9:28. His father will arrive in approximately 1 hour. But right now, in this moment, Lucas Hughes has never felt smaller in his entire life. He looks down at his desk, at the empty space where his assignment had been before she tore it up. His hands grip the edge of the desk. And then he does something that surprises everyone, including himself. He stands up. Ma'am, he says quietly. My name is Lucas Hughes. My father is General Vincent Hughes. He's a 4-star general in the United States Army. He served for 32 years. And when he gets here, you're going to owe me an apology. Mrs. Whitmore's face flushes deep red. Sit down. No, ma'am. The room holds its breath. Lucas Hughes, if you do not sit down right now. The classroom door opens. Principal Hayes steps inside, slightly out of breath, her face flushed. Mrs. Whitmore. Hallway. Immediately. The tone of her voice makes it clear this isn't a request. Mrs. Whitmore blinks in surprise. Principal Hayes, I'm in the middle of. Now, Patricia. Every parent in the room notices the use of her first name. That never happens. Mrs. Whitmore follows Principal Hayes into the hallway. The door closes behind them with a soft click. Through the small window, students can see them talking. Principal Hayes's face is serious. Mrs. Whitmore's expression shifts from confusion to shock to something that looks like fear. Lucas sits back down, his heart pounding. Whatever's happening out there has to do with him. The clock ticks forward. 9:30. In the hallway, Principal Hayes keeps her voice low but firm. Patricia, we have a situation. Mrs. Whitmore crosses her arms defensively. If this is about Lucas Hughes, I was simply maintaining classroom standards. The boy was clearly. I just spent 20 minutes on the phone with Fort Myers Protocol Office. The words hang in the air. Mrs. Whitmore blinks. Protocol Office? Yes. They called because we have a very distinguished visitor arriving. Hayes pulls out her phone, showing Whitmore an email. They needed to confirm our security clearances, parking arrangements, and whether we could accommodate a security detail. Mrs. Whitmore's face goes pale. Security detail? For career day. For Lucas Hughes's father. The hallway seems to tilt. Lucas. Lucas Hughes. Yes, Patricia. The 10-year-old boy you publicly humiliated this morning for supposedly lying about his father being a 4-star general. Oh my God. The boy you sent to my office? The boy whose assignment you tore up? The boy you accused of making up stories because of where he lives and how he looks? Mrs. Whitmore's hand goes to her mouth. I didn't. I thought he was exaggerating. He lives in that modest apartment complex. The father isn't on any social registers. There was no indication. Because senior military officials maintain low profiles for security reasons. Principal Hayes has never raised her voice at a teacher in 15 years of administration. But she's raising it now. I have spent the last half hour on the phone with a very polite but very firm aide explaining why a fourth grader was called a liar for telling the truth about his father's service. Do you have any idea what you've done? Through the hallway windows, both women can see movement outside. 3 black SUVs pull into the school's front circle. Men in dark suits step out first. Secret Service or military security, Hayes isn't sure which. They move with practiced precision, scanning the area. Then from the center vehicle, a man steps out. He's tall, dignified, wearing full military dress uniform. The dark blue jacket is immaculate. Medals cover his chest in neat rows, each one representing service, sacrifice, campaigns. On each shoulder, 4 silver stars catch the morning sunlight. General Vincent Hughes has arrived. Mrs. Whitmore feels her knees go weak. Oh God. Oh God. He's real. Yes, Patricia. He's real. And right now, he's walking into my school to pick up the pieces of what you did to his son. Inside the classroom, students and parents notice the commotion outside. Is that the president? One kid whispers. Look at all those security guys. Mr. Bennett, the lobbyist, stands and moves to the window. His eyes widen. That's a 4-star general. The room erupts in whispers. Lucas sits frozen at his desk. Through the window, he can see his father walking toward the school entrance with that calm, measured stride he's seen 1,000 times. His dad is here. In uniform. Everyone is about to see the truth. General Vincent Hughes walks through Jefferson Elementary's main entrance like he's reviewing troops, calm, measured, taking in every detail. The security personnel remain outside per his instructions. This isn't a military operation. This is a father checking on his son. Principal Hayes meets him in the main hallway. General Hughes, sir. I'm Principal Hayes. I want to apologize. He shakes her hand firmly but briefly. Principal Hayes, I appreciate you accommodating the short notice. I apologize for the disruption to your school day. His voice is professional, controlled. But there's steel underneath. I understand there was some miscommunication regarding my son's assignment. Behind Hayes, Mrs. Whitmore stands frozen, her face the color of chalk. General Hughes's eyes move to her. Not angry. Just assessing. You're Lucas's teacher? Yes, sir. Mrs. Whitmore. General, I want to apologize. There was terrible confusion about. Confusion. His tone doesn't rise. It doesn't need to. My son was called a liar in front of his peers for telling the truth about his father's service. Where exactly was the confusion? Ma'am, I didn't know. I had no way to verify. You didn't verify. You assumed. Mrs. Whitmore has no response. General Hughes continues, his voice quiet but cutting. Ma'am, I've spent 3 decades leading soldiers. One thing I've learned in that time? Assumptions about people based on how they look, where they live, or what you think they should be, those assumptions are usually wrong. And they're always dangerous. He adjusts his uniform jacket slightly. I've commanded troops in combat zones. I've briefed presidents and foreign ministers. I've made decisions that affected thousands of lives. But right now, the most important thing I need to do is check on my 10-year-old son who was humiliated for telling his truth. His eyes never leave hers. Where is Lucas? The classroom door opens. Principal Hayes enters first, her professional smile not quite hiding her stress. Class, we have a very special guest joining us for Career Day. Mrs. Whitmore follows, looking like she might be sick. Then General Vincent Hughes steps through the doorway. The effect is immediate. The room goes silent. Not classroom silent, cemetery silent. Every parent stands without thinking. Mr. Bennett, who regularly dines with senators, actually straightens his posture like a cadet. Dr. Carter, the surgeon, places her hand over her heart. The military families in the room recognize the rank immediately. 4 stars. You don't see 4 stars walk into an elementary school every day. Lucas sees his father. and everything he's been holding inside breaks open. Dad. His voice is small, broken, relieved. General Hughes's professional demeanor cracks for just a moment. His eyes find his son sitting at that desk, tear-stained and exhausted. He crosses the room in 4 long strides, not caring about protocol or appearances. He knelt down to Lucas's level, right there in front of everyone, and pulls his son into his arms. "I'm here, Lucas. I'm here. I'm sorry I was late." Lucas buries his face in his father's uniform and cries. Not because he's sad anymore, because he's been holding everything in for so long. Because his dad is finally here. Because the truth is finally visible. The embrace lasts maybe 10 seconds. But in those 10 seconds, every person in that room understands what they witnessed this morning. A child telling the truth and being destroyed for it. General Hughes stands, keeping Lucas's hand in his. He turns to face the class. "Good morning. I'm General Vincent Hughes, United States Army. I apologize for the disruption to your career day, but I promised my son I'd be here, and I don't break promises to my son." His voice is calm, professional, but every word carries weight. He glances at Mrs. Whitmore, who stands near her desk, looking like she wants to disappear. "Ma'am, I understand there was some question about Lucas's assignment." The room holds its breath. Mrs. Whitmore opens her mouth, but no words come out. Principal Hayes steps in. "General Hughes, please, if you'd like to share with the students about your career, we'd be honored." He nods once. "Thank you." He turns back to the class. Lucas still holding his hand. "My son wrote that I'm a 4-star general who served for 32 years. Every single word of that is true. I've commanded troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've served in Korea, Germany, and across the United States. Right now I help develop military strategy for the Joint Chiefs of Staff." The students stare with wide eyes. Lucas also wrote that leadership means serving others, not yourself. He learned that by watching his mother, Dr. Angela Hughes, a pediatric surgeon who saved children's lives while I was halfway around the world. He learned it by moving 8 times. By changing schools 6 times. By spending birthdays and Christmases and Thanksgivings without his father, because I was deployed. He pauses, looking at each student. My son didn't exaggerate in his assignment. If anything, he was modest. The truth of what military families sacrifice is harder than anything he wrote on that paper. His eyes move to Mrs. Whitmore. When a child tells you their truth, especially when that truth is difficult or doesn't match your expectations, the first instinct should be to listen. Not to assume they're lying because their truth makes you uncomfortable. The room is absolutely silent. Mrs. Whitmore's voice comes out as a whisper. "General Hughes, I owe Lucas an apology. A real one." She turns to face Lucas, tears streaming down her face now. "Lucas, I was wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. I made assumptions about you and your family based on things that had nothing to do with who you are. I judged you. I didn't listen to you. I didn't believe you. And I hurt you." Her voice breaks. "You deserved so much better from me. You deserve to be believed. I am so sorry." Lucas looks at his father, who gives him a small nod. "Your choice, son." Lucas takes a breath. "Mrs. Whitmore, my dad says everybody makes mistakes. He says the important thing is what you do after you make them." The wisdom in those words, coming from a 10-year-old who'd been humiliated hours earlier, hits everyone in the room. Maybe you could, believe kids more. Even when their stories sound too big to be true. "I will, Lucas." Mrs. Whitmore wipes her eyes. "I promise I will." Deshawn is brought back from the office. General Hughes shakes his hand and thanks him for standing up for Lucas. Tyler Bennett approaches Lucas afterward. "I'm sorry I didn't say more earlier. That was really brave what you did." Other students gather around Lucas. Not with pity now. With respect. Mr. Bennett, the lobbyist, approaches General Hughes. "Sir, I work with members of Congress every day. What you said about listening first. I needed to hear that too." Ms. Wilson, who cleans the Capitol building, shakes the general's hand with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for what you said about service. Every kind." Principal Hayes makes an announcement to the class. Effective immediately, Jefferson Elementary will be implementing comprehensive implicit bias training for all staff members. What happened this morning should never happen again. Mrs. Whitmore nods, her hand over her heart. I'll be the first to sign up. Then the general does something unexpected. From his pocket, he pulls out a small gold coin, a command coin from his unit. These are traditionally given for exceptional service. He places it in Mrs. Whitmore's hand. I'm not giving you this for what happened this morning, ma'am. I'm giving it to you for your apology. That took real courage. Use it to remember that growth comes from our mistakes, not our successes. Mrs. Whitmore clutches the coin, nodding, unable to speak. For the next 20 minutes, General Hughes gives a presentation about military service, leadership, and sacrifice. He answers questions from curious students. He shares age-appropriate stories. He makes every child feel important. And at the end, Principal Hayes suggests a class photo. Students gather around the general. Lucas stands front and center, his hand in his father's hand, wearing the biggest smile of his life. That photo will be viral on social media within 48 hours. But right now, in this moment, it's just a son standing with his dad. Finally believed. Finally vindicated. Finally seen. That evening, the Hughes family sits together in their modest Arlington apartment, the same apartment Mrs. Whitmore had judged as proof that Lucas was lying. Dr. Angela Hughes left surgery early when Vincent called to tell her what happened. Now she sits on the couch with Lucas tucked under her arm, still in her scrubs. General Hughes sits across from them, out of uniform now, back in jeans and a t-shirt. Just a dad again. How are you feeling, baby? Angela asks, smoothing Lucas's hair. Tired, but good, I think. What did you learn today? His father asks. Lucas thinks about it carefully. His parents have always taught him to find lessons in hard experiences. I learned that telling the truth is really hard sometimes, especially when people don't want to believe you. But you should still do it anyway. Vincent nods. What else? That people's ideas about you can be totally wrong. But that doesn't mean you should change who you are to fit what they expect. Angela kisses the top of his head. That's very wise, Lucas. But Dad. Lucas looks up at his father. Why didn't you just tell the school about your job before? Then this wouldn't have happened. It's a fair question. One that Vincent's been asking himself all afternoon. He leans forward, elbows on his knees. Lucas, your worth has nothing to do with my rank. You're valuable because of who you are. You're kind. You're honest. You're brave. I never want you to think you need my accomplishments to matter. He pauses. But I also realize now that keeping such a low profile put you in an impossible position. You shouldn't have had to defend your truth alone. So what happens now? Now we make sure this never happens to another kid at Jefferson Elementary. Or anywhere else. 3 months pass. Jefferson Elementary looks different now. Not physically, but the culture has shifted. Every staff member completed comprehensive implicit bias training. Not optional. Principal Hayes made it a requirement for continued employment. The training covered racial bias, class bias, and the danger of assumptions. Real scenarios. Uncomfortable conversations. Necessary growth. Mrs. Patricia Whitmore attended every session. She didn't just participate, she helped lead them. In a faculty meeting 2 months after the incident, she stood in front of her colleagues and shared her experience. 3 months ago, I hurt a child because I couldn't see past my own assumptions. I looked at Lucas Hughes and decided his truth was impossible because it didn't match the picture I had in my head of what a general's family should look like. Her voice is steady now. Stronger. I've spent the last few months examining my biases, the ones I didn't even know I had. I've learned that my instincts about students were often just prejudices dressed up as experience. She holds up the command coin General Hughes gave her. I keep this on my desk. Not as a trophy. As a reminder that growth comes from our mistakes, not our successes. The training led to real policy changes. New protocol. Verify before questioning. If a student makes a claim about their family that seems unusual, the first step is to check with parents, not to interrogate the child. The Student Council, inspired by Lucas's experience, created the Truth and Trust Initiative, a peer support system where students could talk about times they felt unheard or disbelieved. Lucas became one of the founding members. Mrs. Whitmore's classroom changed too. On the first day back after the incident, She gathered her students and created a new classroom charter. The kids helped write it. It hangs on the wall now in large letters. In this classroom, we believe first and question respectfully. We never assume someone is lying because their truth seems impossible. Everyone's story matters. Every student signed it. Even Lucas. Especially Lucas. Mrs. Whitmore also started a monthly family story circle. Students could share about their families without judgment. The goal wasn't to compare or compete, just to listen and learn. During one session, Sophia Wilson talked about how her mother took pride in her cleaning work at the Capitol building, how she knew every hallway and office, how senators sometimes asked her advice about the building's history. Mrs. Whitmore listened differently now. She heard the pride in Sophia's voice, instead of dismissing it as less important than other careers. Deshawn talked about how his dad could diagnose car problems just by listening to the engine, how he'd built his small mechanic shop from nothing. Tyler Bennett surprised everyone by saying his dad's lobbying job seemed less important after meeting General Hughes, that he'd started thinking about what service really meant. And Lucas? He talked about military families, about sacrifice, about the kids who move constantly and miss their parents and keep going anyway. The class listened without interruption. That's what changed most. The listening. The viral photo spread faster than anyone expected. The image of General Hughes in full dress uniform, 4 stars visible, kneeling beside his 10-year-old son while emotional students and parents looked on. The caption told the story, how a teacher had called a black student a liar for writing about his father's service, how she'd torn up his assignment, how she'd humiliated him publicly, and how a 4-star general had walked into that classroom to stand beside his son. News outlets picked it up. Local news, then national broadcasts. Social media exploded with reactions. Some people focused on the racism, others on the classism, many on the courage it took for Lucas to stand his ground. But the most shared aspect? Mrs. Whitmore's apology and transformation. People were tired of stories where the antagonist faced consequences but never changed. This was different. This showed redemption was possible. 3 months later, Mrs. Whitmore received invitations to speak at education conferences about implicit bias. She accepted some, declined others, but always emphasized the same message. I'm not a hero of this story. I'm the cautionary tale. But I'm proof that people can change if they're willing to do the hard work. Lucas today is different from the scared 10-year-old who stood at the front of that classroom. He's more confident, still humble, still kind, but no longer afraid to share his truth. He started a peer mentoring program at Jefferson Elementary where older students help younger ones navigate difficult situations. The first rule of the program: believe first. Question with kindness. His friendship with Deshawn grew stronger. Tyler Bennett became a regular at their lunch table. Even Sophia Wilson joined their group. They called themselves the Truth Squad, kids who committed to listening to each other's stories without judgment. General Hughes attended school events when his schedule allowed. Not in uniform, just as Lucas's dad. He wanted his son to know he was proud of him for who he was, not what his father did. Dr. Angela Hughes continued saving lives at Walter Reed, but she made sure to attend every one of Lucas's presentations about military families. Because that's what this was really about. Not generals or ranks or positions, but a family that loved each other. And a son who learned that truth, even when it's hard, is always worth defending. The Hughes family went back to their quiet life. But Jefferson Elementary, and everyone who heard Lucas's story, was forever changed. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand in your truth, even when the whole world tells you you're wrong. Especially then. Now, here's the thing about Lucas Hughes' story. It's one child's experience in one classroom in Arlington, Virginia. But it represents something much larger happening in schools across America every single day. Right now, right this second, somewhere, a child is being told their truth doesn't matter because it doesn't match someone's expectations. A black student is being questioned more harshly than their white classmates. A child from a working-class family is being dismissed because adults assume they're exaggerating. A military kid is being misunderstood because people don't see the sacrifice behind their calm exterior. And most of the time, there's no 4-star general walking through the door to make it right. So the question becomes, what do we do about it? The statistics are sobering. According to the U.S. Department of Education, Black students are suspended or expelled at 3 times the rate of white students for the same infractions. Subjective offenses, things like defiance or disruption, account for most of these disparities. Translation: when a teacher has to use judgment about whether a student is being disrespectful, Black students are punished more severely. The same study found that 72% of teachers have never received any training in recognizing their own implicit biases. They're making decisions about children's futures based on assumptions they don't even know they have. Another study from the American Psychological Association found that Black boys as young as 10 are seen as less innocent and more adult-like than their white peers. They're given less benefit of the doubt, less grace, less childhood. Lucas Hughes experienced all of this in one morning, and his story shows us the real cost. Children who feel unheard in school are 4 times more likely to disengage academically. They stop raising their hands, stop sharing their stories, stop believing their truth matters. That's the invisible damage of bias. Not just the moment of humiliation, but the slow erosion of a child's belief in themselves. But Lucas's story also shows us something else. That change is possible. That people can grow. That systems can improve when we demand better. Mrs. Whitmore could have denied what she did. She could have made excuses. She could have blamed Lucas for being too sensitive. Instead, she did the harder thing. She looked at her own biases. She apologized sincerely. She changed her classroom and her approach to teaching. That doesn't erase what she did, but it shows a path forward. Jefferson Elementary could have swept the incident under the rug. Instead, they implemented mandatory bias training. They changed their policies. They created systems to prevent it from happening again. That's how institutions improve, by acknowledging harm and taking concrete action to prevent future harm. And Lucas? He could have let that experience make him small and quiet. Instead, he started a peer mentoring program. He shared his story. He helped other kids find their voice. That's resilience. Not because trauma made him stronger, but because he chose to use his experience to help others. So what can you do? First, ask yourself some hard questions. When someone tells you their truth, especially someone from a marginalized community, do you believe them? Or do you immediately look for reasons to doubt? When a child shares something that seems unusual or impressive, is your first instinct to celebrate them, or to question whether they're exaggerating? When you see someone being treated unfairly, do you speak up, or do you stay silent to avoid making things awkward? These aren't comfortable questions, but they're necessary ones. Second, take action. If you're a parent, talk to your child's school about implicit bias training. Ask what policies they have to protect students from discrimination. If you're a teacher, examine your own classroom. Are you giving every student the same benefit of the doubt, or are your assumptions affecting how you treat them? If you're just someone who heard this story and felt something, share it. Conversations change culture. The more we talk about these issues, the harder they are to ignore. And finally, teach the children in your life that their truth matters. That they don't have to shrink themselves to make adults comfortable. That standing in your truth, even when it's hard, is always worth it. General Vincent Hughes didn't walk into Jefferson Elementary that morning to humiliate a teacher. He walked in to stand beside his son. To show Lucas and every child watching that truth matters. That you matter. The question now is, what will you do with that message? Will you scroll past this story and forget it by tomorrow? Or will you let it change how you listen, how you believe, how you treat the people around you? Because here's the truth that Lucas Hughes learned at 10 years old. One person standing in their truth can change an entire system. But only if the rest of us are willing to listen. If this story moved you, do something with that feeling. Share it. Someone in your life needs to hear this message today. Drop a comment below. Have you ever been disbelieved when telling your truth? Or witness someone else's truth being dismissed? Your story matters too. And hit that like button. Hit subscribe. Not for me, for every Lucas Hughes out there who's standing in their truth right now, wondering if anyone's going to believe them. Be that person who believes. Be that person who listens. Be that person who stands up when everyone else stays silent. Because that's how we change the world. One truth, one conversation, one act of courage at a time. Thanks for listening to Lucas's story. Now go tell yours.